Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CopyPress webinar today. I'm Dave Snyder. I'm the CEO of CopyPress. You're going to be mostly seeing my face. Behind the scenes, I have Liz Groth, who will be helping me manage the comments and questions, and then telling me when I do dumb things. But I'm excited about this webinar about lead nurturing. It's a topic that, quite honestly, is difficult, right? It's something that takes a long time to figure out, it takes a lot of iterative process to get correct, and can feel overwhelming sometimes. So if you're not familiar with CopyPress, we are a content marketing agency. Our specialty is really handling scaled campaigns, essentially working as a latch onto your team to provide a full scale content marketing unit along with technology. That's going to be the only sales pitch you get from me during this process, because I really do not like selling anything during the process of a webinar. It's more about teaching and educating. Like I said, as we go through, if you want to ask questions, I'm not going to be looking at the comments just yet because I'm easily distracted like a dog. So just add the questions in there. Liz will be monitoring them, and we'll get to a Q&A section as well. Another note on this topic particularly is that it's a really robust topic. It's much, much bigger than a single webinar. And so we are going to be moving quickly through a bunch of things that could be their own individual webinar. With that noted, Liz is going to put up a URL to my personal Calendly. So if you really wanted to dive in more and understand, even just talk again, this wouldn't be a sales call, but just like, hey, how would I approach lead nurturing for my particular business? You can always set a time up with me to chat. That link's not clickable, but you can copy and paste the link into your browser and set up a time with me. Because again, if you're more experienced, you may find this webinar is not going into the detail that you personally want. And I understand that, but also I'm trying to craft an experience where we are able to get to the overall concept and you can pick out nuggets along the way where we can go. The topic of the webinar is really lead nurturing through content. You're planning in this process to interact with your customers throughout your pipeline. So we are going to be talking about uncovering what your audience needs, crafting compelling headlines and content, right? That's the beginning part of this, is the first content they interact with on your site to get them into the pipeline. Then we're going to talk about understanding different kind of lead magnets and what a lead magnet is. Those are the entities that you will utilize to take that initial traffic and actually turn them into pipeline type of leads. And then crafting a purpose-driven newsletter. That's the content you use to engage with those leads you brought in through your lead magnet, and then tracking content engagement. If you already look at just this slide, you can see, okay, these could all be individualized topics. And as we go through, you'll see, oh, wait, there's things within that, right? This is a really broad subject, but I think it is a great place for everyone. This is where you would need to start on your process and then iterate from there. Okay, so the first step is understanding your audience. Means understanding their needs. Like, this is the basics of marketing, right? Like, people have problems and you are representing a solution for those problems. So understanding what your audience and what their needs are is paramount to you telling them what your product is. People don't buy products, they buy solutions to a problem or an issue that they have from an emotional connection standpoint, right? So some of the things we would talk about are like, what topics is your audience searching for online? What information do they need? And what problems are they trying to solve? So what topics is your audience searching for online? The vision on the screen right now, or the image, is of software that CopyPress built called Thematical, which we use to do topical analysis. It clusters similar keywords into topical groups without humans having to do it. It uses machine learning to actually do that topical construction. But there are a lot of different tools you can utilize to get this kind of information. Even if you're not an SEO, keyword research is really, from a content perspective, isn't just about, well, what can I rank for SEO? It's what is the psychology of people looking for information online and how are they looking for it, which gives you a great starting point to then build your content around it, right? And I think that's where people approach keyword research incorrectly. They're just looking at, what are the keywords I need to stuff into a piece of content in order to rank highly. No, like this is the beginning of like a psychographic analysis of how are people searching for my solution or things around my solution, and how should I craft content to be similar. The place I always start from a topical perspective is the information we're actually able to glean from how people utilize Google or other search engines. So that would be things like SEMrush is an option, Ahrefs, our one of our guys, Jeremy Rivera, has SEO Arcade, which is another kind of clustering and topical software. So, there are lots of solutions there. But the reason I have this slide is, even if you're not from an SEO background, topic creation based on what people are searching is valuable. And I would say you deciding what you think people want to hear is way less valuable. And I see that all the time where it's like, well, I think people want XYZ. Another great place to go for this information, by the way, is your sales team. So like today, CopyPress was working on a landing page, and Liz had the idea, good idea, Liz, to add an FAQ section onto the page. And Liz said, hey, Dave, what do people ask about on the sales calls, right? They're not trying to guess what to add to the FAQs. They're using the experts within the company to actually suss out what people are looking for. So the next question is, what information do they actually need from here? Right. So I have the example on the screen of watch basketball, somebody searching for that. Google, again, gives us really good information on, well, people are also asking about, this isn't just random questions people are asking about. These are questions that repeatedly get asked about around that cluster of watch basketball. So again, this is a psychographic kind of thing where we're saying, okay, what is the psychology behind how people are searching for this and what they're trying to do from a needs and pain point perspective. So I always find it valuable, like once I figured out what my topics are, is to go into Google and say, okay, what are people also searching around this topic? It's great insight for content creation. It can also really help out with subtopic creation. So if you are creating a piece of content around watch basketball, maybe these questions are ones that you want to answer in that piece of content, or these could be completely new ideas for new content. But it really gives you an idea of, all right, when people are searching for this, what exactly are they looking to do when they search for this? So understanding the actual need, and need means pain, right? Or emotion, like what's the emotional trigger? That is something else that you need to think about when you're creating that first layer of purpose-driven content. What problem are they trying to solve, right? So again, we go back to the actual problem. What you don't want to do is write content that is just like, well, I'm going to write content about what they need, but I'm just going to write it about our product. No, you need to introduce the problem, let them know you understand the problem. Hey, I've had that problem too, right? If you look at old school sales copywriting, they would also often go into the hero's journey and narrative of, hey, I used to have this problem. Man, it was terrible. I totally feel what you feel. But you know what happened? This thing came along, this blue widget, and it changed everything. It's solved, right? They're not even going into the features of the blue widget. They're just creating an experience that lets you know your problem is understood. I found a solution. It made my life better. Here's the solution. Now let's talk about features of it, right? So in our last example, when we looked at that screen, we can infer that the user typing in watch basketball, they don't have a channel or a subscription to watch their favorite team play. They're trying to figure out where it's streaming, any of those things. And you could talk to those pain points. You could also just put a list of, like, right when I'm on Sunday trying to figure out where the Dolphins are playing, put a list of places they can actually find the information. But if you're trying to sell a product that's a streaming product, you can be like, hey, are you tired of like a Fubo or something? Are you tired of searching everywhere? Guess what? I was too. Found Fubo. I've got all my sports in one place. Don't have to worry about it anymore, right? because the idea isn't just to give information to people. Like, nobody on this call is probably here just to say, yeah, I'm here just to inform people. My job ends there. It's to take that information and move people to an action. So based on that, let's now understand how we're going to engage this audience. How are we going to actually take the information? All right, I know what people are looking for. I know what their pain points are. I know how to speak to those pain points. Let's write content that actually engages and nurtures leads. So crafting compelling headlines. Again, this is one of those topics. We could do an entire webinar about crafting compelling topics, but I broke this down enough to where you can just take these simple steps that I've created to create better topics. This headline information also will be usable for, we'll talk about newsletters later, in terms of creating subject lines for your newsletters, in terms of creating headlines for ebooks or white papers, which we'll talk about in the lead magnet phase, right? So a lot of the information, even though we're moving sequentially through the steps right now, talking about content that is focused on driving traffic to your site that then takes action, can be utilized throughout this process as we go. So crafting compelling headlines, we're going to talk about starting with the 5 W's. We're going to talk about trying the 4 U's, the concept of SVO, subject, verb, object, ideation, and how this actually is a place to use AI. And you'll hear me talk about AI sometimes as we go through this. Like, I'll talk about AI's viability from a creating compelling content standpoint. Note that I run a content company, so you would think I'm not the biggest fan of AI. I actually am a huge fan of AI. I just also think people utilize it in the completely wrong ways and don't understand what it actually can do. So just take that with a grain of salt. I could also be completely wrong, right? I'm smart enough to know how smart I am not. And so, like, that there are people that are better than me, but I can give you at least my perspective on AI and how that would fit into this. The power of the 5 W's and how. How gets left out because 5 W's just sounds better. But this is something that, like, when I was in journalism school, which I did not continue on because I realized journalism is a terrible profession from a compensation standpoint, that, like, you're taught, like, the first day, right? Like, I was an editor of my paper in high school. I probably learned that there as well. We're talking about who, what, when, where, why, and how. And the concept here is starting your titles with these 5 W's or the how, because they give really clear understanding, crystal clear understanding of what your audience is going to get from your content. The other thing it does is it most often will be a question that person also has, that you are identifying immediately with their need and saying, oh, this article has a title that's the exact question I have, and so it is a fit for my need. So examples are, who needs vitamin B12 supplements the most? What is vitamin B12 and why is it crucial for your health? When should you get tested for vitamin B12 deficiencies? Where does vitamin B12 come from? Why vitamin B12 deficiency is more common than you think. Each of these, right, it's really clear what you would get in terms of the content that's presented. And for some people doing research online, that's the need. My need is I need to be informed immediately about this thing. And so that becomes compelling to them, right? Like, there's ways to not start this, like the vitamin B12 supplements that are most important, right? It's just not like, it's not as catchy from a psychological perspective as who needs vitamin B12 supplements. Oh, am I the person that needs it? That's what I'm looking for. So this is just an easy, right? We're starting with the easiest, and we'll move to the harder concepts from an ideation perspective. But a good way to start, you usually start with, all right, we want to write about B12. Let's just throw on the board a bunch of 5 W's and hows. What are some different concepts, and then weed them down, right? So what are the U's? U's are making your headlines unique, ultra specific, useful, and urgent. So an example of unique, this is the water bottle you want during the zombie apocalypse. It's so it's so startling from the standpoint of like, why does the water bottle matter during the zombie apocalypse, that it's like it's going to stand out amongst the other content that might show up or that might be out there. For ultra specific, the condensation creating water bottle will be your bike companion for life, right? So we have condensation, we have bike companion, ultra specific content targeted towards a specific subset of your audience potentially, that again will stand out. And so the real thing with the use is, how do you make things stand out clearer? Useful, get this new water bottle before your next run or you won't fully quench your thirst. And urgent, this new water bottle saves bikers hundreds of dollars annually. um, Actually, I think that's flipped. All right, let's go back. Useful, this new water bottle saves bikers hundreds of dollars annually. Urgent, get this water bottle before your next run or you won't fully quench your thirst, right? So creating a sense of urgency, I really love those because they lead to action, and it's really then easy to lead from the initial visit to a compelling action, which we'll talk about with lead magnets. But any of these are really good to utilize. Let's talk about SVO. So SVO is a brainstorming technique where, when you're in one of those marketing meetings, when you have a rubber ball and you're throwing it against the wall and you're kind of thinking of a bunch of ideas to come up with, place to start on your whiteboard would be create a bunch of subjects, right? Like, who are we talking to? Who's our audience? Get a list together. All right, well, what verbs what actions do we want them to take, or what actions are they looking to get? Like, what actions solve their need and problem? And then what objects? Well, what are objects that revolve around that need or problem? You just create a big list. And then what you're doing from there is just brainstorming ideas where you kind of like, you take from each list and combine them together. So example one I have here, how marketing managers, right? So marketing managers, one of our subjects, can optimize one of our verbs, SEO to reach a wider audience. Audience is one of our objects, right? Marketers use remarketing to grow their audience and increase engagement. Interns learn to reduce budget waste while improving remarketing strategies, right? And so this is a strategy, just like, all right, we got to create our editorial calendar for purpose-driven editorial content. We got to come up with headlines and topics. We already have our topics. Our topics would kind of go into the subject, verb, and object kind of level. And then this is a way to kind of put those topics and these other items together quickly and just come up with a really easy way to come up with ideas. And you're not going to use all of them, right? Like, I mean, I would say if your content strategy revolves around like, yeah, we're going to create 5 ideas and just create those 5 ideas, that's not a great strategy. Like, there should be some brainstorming where you're like, all right, we're going to create 20 ideas and let's pick the best 5 out. Because your brain's going to warm up after a while and you'll see different things that are happening with some of the ideas or ways you can tweak them. So AI is really, like I said, one of the places that can help here. And so what I did was I wrote up a prompt, said act as a copywriter, create 6 headlines from this mix of subject, verbs, and objects, and gave them the subject, verbs, and objects we just looked at in the last one. Utilize a mix of starting the headlines with who, what, when, where, how. For 3 of the headlines, make 2 remaining headlines ultra specific in detail. Make the last headline have a sense of urgency. So I kind of, this prompt used everything that we just talked about. And what I got back was things like, who will lead the next wave of SEO optimization, marketers and their secret strategies. And then for an example of ultra specific, how to reduce digital marketing spend by 30%, right? The 30% is the ultra specific part. We didn't give the AI much more information for ultra specific. I could have improved the prompt by saying, here's some information for ultra specific. And the last one was act now, essential strategies for growth in your audience numbers. That one was really basic from a sense of urgency. But again, I wouldn't limit this to 6. If I was going to do it, I would do like 30 of them and pick the best ones out, right? This was a simple prompt that took me like 2 minutes to write. Let me get what's out there and come back to it, just to kind of show you that by using the 3 strategies I put in front of you, combined with ChatGPT or any other AI you want to utilize, you can build a very good headline and topic creation strategy. All right, so now let's move on. We talked about headlines again. Headlines could be an entire topic. Remember, headlines isn't just about the content we're creating to drive people in for purpose-driven content. It's also has utility, because we won't talk about it later, for newsletters and for lead magnets. So let's talk about compelling content. So AI content isn't compelling. This will be my negative AI spiel, and I'll explain why. We're going to talk about authority and expertise and why those are compelling, and why compelling, purpose-driven, those terms really mean action. We are trying to get somebody to do something. Driving traffic for the purpose of driving traffic, unless you are in a pure publishing market and get paid on a CPM, has no value, or little value, right? Like, you're trying to convert somebody into something. So really the measurement of compelling or purpose-driven content is it meeting that purpose? Is it leading on to something else? All right, so AI in it. When we're talking about creating compelling content, from my perspective, AI cannot do it, not by itself. So AI, right? Like large language models, which are kind of synonymous with AI at this point, but large language models are a type of AI, are built around information that it's trained on, meaning it can only produce results for information that already exists. Compelling content is largely not information that somebody has already read somewhere else. Compelling content has a uniqueness about it, and that uniqueness is usually backed up by the authoritativeness of the writer or their expertise, right? And so it is the difference between reading like a WikiHow article on how to dribble a basketball and getting a master class from Chris Paul on how to dribble a basketball. Those are completely different things. The WikiHow one isn't going to lead anybody to a conversion, or fewer people, whereas the Chris Paul one, to sign up for his training, potentially would. And this is my issue with AI as a complete solution for all content. I think it does some content very well. Your evergreen topic-based content that is like very definition based, does not need to be expounded on or have future thoughts or analysis done or anything like that. Fine. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about compelling content that leads to a conversion. That needs a human touch. Now, we could go on and on about how you could do it. Sure, you could do a supreme amount of planning that you feed into an LLM, that you just use the LLM as a copywriter because you're feeding it a bunch of outlines and quotes and information. Okay, that's still not starting off an AI with a 30-word prompt and getting back a great piece of content, right? And if you look at a lot of the AI assistants, they're not set up to have deep, rich materials added that are customized. So, when we talk about compelling content, I think the main thing to take away this is you're not jumping into ChatGPT and just flying out 10 articles and then putting them up and calling it, well, this is going to be compelling. Could those rank and drive search traffic? Yeah, I mean, we've seen that happening right now. What they won't do, though, is connect with the user in a way that will push them through to another conversion. The thing that you need to look at is, well, what can't AI do that I need to do with my content, right? So AI has almost given us this measuring stick, which has always existed because we always had lower end copywriters to kind of balance off of. But now we have a measuring stick. What can't AI do? Well, they can't bring authority and they can't bring expertise. They can borrow expertise sometimes. They can borrow authority. But like right now, if you asked a ChatGPT or an LLM, like, what is the next 5 years of search marketing look like? It will give you a response and it will be based on stuff it's already read. Whereas if you ask me that, you'll get my unique response based on like 18 years of working in the space and having seen changes and knowing people that have worked at Google and what they've said. And then I take into account like the fiscal reality of them being a public company and all of those pieces, right? And so that's what authority and expertise are. And whatever you're selling or whatever leads you're trying to drive, you have experts and you have authorities in your space that you can leverage. So authoritative content that conveys expertise is compelling to audiences, truly compelling. Like if I'm reading an article, like my hobby is strength training, I do not just want to read a basic evergreen article that tells me hypertrophy is important to muscle growth. I want to read an article from a person who's an exercise scientist who breaks down the exercises in a way that tells me how to get the most hypertrophy possible with the least amount of work, right? On my joints and what, because I'm an old man now and it's getting harder and harder. So engage experts and authorities in your organization during the content planning process. We have an ebook about authorship and authority where I believe we break that down and kind of give you some step-by-steps, because getting these people engaged can be really difficult sometimes. I understand that, but if you can get buy-in, you've got great people in your organization that can help you with this process. Find authoritative writers. So let's say, all right, our engineers at my software company will not help me with this. Cool. Go find authoritative writers who are already writing about the topic that you want to write about, right? So somebody who has a blog who's covering your industry that you can hire to start writing for your brand, or at least helping you plan the content out. Give real world examples and case studies. We're doing another ebook right now called Cyborg Content. I will be putting in real life prompting that I have built that works with examples from AI of how we did it. AI can't produce that content. And it is valuable content that people would want to interact with. And also they can see, oh, this was utilized. You have case studies and work that you've done that makes your content completely unique. Also in the background, it's selling the proficiency of your company, but that kind of information I think is really, really compelling. Utilize quotes, references, and data, right? So data is really powerful as long as you can reference it appropriately. Quotes from people within your organization, or if you do interviews with other people, but quotes give amount of humanity to it. And really what you're doing again there is, all right, I need authority and expertise on this, but I just have a general copywriter writing it. What's the easiest way to get authority into this? Quotes can work well for that. And then the whole point of creating this content, right? We created a great headline. They came into our article to read it. They're reading the article. You got to get them to take an action, right? What's the action? The first action could be viewing another article. That's great. You got the bounce rate lower, but there needs to be an action. And I think what we don't even touch on here is somebody signing up for a sales call. Let's put that to the side, because I got to tell you, the likelihood that someone's going to sign up, like I'm going to come in and read on your strength training topic and get some good information. I'm going to schedule a consult right away. It's not as good as me signing up for an ebook on like the conjugate method that you put together. That's what we're going to be talking about. How do you get that person? Okay, I'm engaged and I'm compelled, but I'm not compelled enough to be bothered by a sales guy yet. What's that in between phase? But if your content isn't compelling, if it's just dry, that it's just going to lead to high bounce rates. And you see it, you've probably seen it. You've probably seen SEO focused content you've created just leading to high bounce rates, where you definitely answered the question they had, but you didn't really meet the need that they had, right? You didn't get into the actual connection with them to solve the problem. You just answered the question. That's where you get those high bounce rates. And that's just not what we're trying to achieve through this process, right? Again, we're not getting paid just for traffic. We're getting paid for somebody to convert. And you might say, well, the conversion's a sales lead. Okay, well, that's why we're on this webinar, because we want to get the sales lead, but sometimes it takes some more work, right? CopyPress, and with what we bill out at, it's very very, very unlikely anyone will ever hit a blog post by us, no matter how good it is, and they'd be like, I need to talk to Dave right now. They want to find out more about us. The sales cycles are really long. They got to sell us to their higher up, so they need more information before they put their neck on the line. We got to nurture them along a little more. So that's what we're going to talk about: lead magnets. We're going to talk about types of lead magnets, choosing the right lead magnet for your audience, and creating a successful lead magnet. This is another topic, can be its own ebook and webinar, but we're going to move through it pretty quickly. So types of lead magnets. If you never heard the term before, it's a magnet for getting leads. It's genius, right? So types of lead magnets. And it's not limited to this list. These are just ideas for you. One, content. We've got ebooks, white papers. I love both of those. My caveat to you there is that you need to have some design people on staff, and you need to really think through your CTAs within the ebooks and the white papers. Newsletters, which we will talk about, they're a tremendous way to stay engaged with your audience. Webinars like the one we're on. Some of you probably receive our newsletter, and guess what? You're getting purpose-driven content right now. Mini guides, case studies are tremendous. I cannot say enough about it. And we have a friend of ours, casestudybuddy.com, that he is the best in the business at creating case studies, access to gated content. So then you've got tools and resources. So things like training materials. It's going to be a little bit different than ebooks and white papers. It's going to be things that you can use to like train your staff or train yourself on things, less than a white paper would be. Calculators are great. Now we're talking about interactive content, checklists, workbooks. These are all actionable items people can take an action with immediately. Where content is more thought-provoking, like staying engaged, right? These are tools and resources are really interactive. Then we've got other freebies. So product or service discounts, free consultations, free product trials, free, right? All your free stuff, coupon stuff like that. Choosing the right lead magnet is really important. Just being like, well, I'd love to do a calculator. It's like, all right, well, what do you do? And does it lend itself to creating a calculator, right? Like CopyPress doesn't have any calculators because what the hell would we be calculating? But you got to make sure you have the right thing that fits. So content magnets, as an example, right? Our first ones on our list, the ebooks, the white papers, the newsletter, they're a great fit for high cost B2B products or audiences doing heavy research, right? So again, we're going back to the customer need. If the customer need is, I really need more information, right? So let's go back to my strength training one. I need more information on how to maximize my training for my aging body. What I want to do heavy research, and those content magnets are really good for that. Or again, high cost B2B, where somebody has to take your product and sell it throughout the company and chain. You're giving them things that they can now ship off and forward to other people, right? So that has high value. Tools and resources can be a great fit for SaaS products or audiences looking for actionable solutions to their problems, right? So going back to the strength training one, if I was searching for conjugate method workbooks, that would be a great place for me to get a tool or a resource rather than an ebook, because I don't really want to read on it. I want a workbook where I can track my different things. So those are action-based compelling points. And then freebies work really well in the B2C space and SaaS spaces, particularly where the audience is ready. They're ready for testing, right? You have a $39.99 product. The barrier to entry is low. And the main thing is just getting them to test the product out. And you need to push that a little bit. Those freebies work really well there, right? But freebies aren't going to work as well on the high cost B2B products. Like, you sell a $10,000 a month software service for large corporations. Hey, try a free month. That's just not that's not the play, because somebody at that level with that kind of enterprise is going to be like, all right, we got to get you through all the security points and all of these things. It's been 6 months to get a 1 month free subscription. They may want 3 months as part of their package, but that's not going to move the needle for them. So you can also stack and supplement to increase lead engagement. And really everything we're talking about, you can stack and supplement. What I mean by that is it's not just one chain. Like, here's the piece of content. This is the one lead magnet for this content, newsletter. It's like, no, man, compelling content. All right, they did list this lead magnet. Cool. And our CRM, let's send them an email for this lead magnet. Okay, 30 days have gone by, nothing from them. Let's send them this lead magnet. Well, let's send them this article that we just did, right? And so it's a compounding effect of all of this content to stay in front of and continue to educate your consumer. The whole point of this webinar is creating a silo where you are constantly in front of these leads. You're not just taking one shot at them and it's like, all right, they didn't interact with that thing, so we're dead now. So examples of this: deliver a macronutrient calculator to a lead who downloads an ebook on macronutrient optimization. So the first thing they came in would have been like, how to balance your macronutrients. That's the content. Then they were action oriented and it was compelling. So they downloaded an ebook about optimization. We just sent them an email afterwards on, here's a calculator to help you on this process daily, right? Deliver a promo code for a free month of your service to a lead that utilizes a free tool. That's a light version of your offering. So CopyPress is working on this now for our Thematical Lite. Thematical is a more expensive piece of software. So you know what? Let's give them a free offering of that to get them a little taste of that, to then move them along in the funnel. Or going back to the first example, somebody downloads, actually uses the macronutrient calculator first, deliver them the ebook, right? You can just reutilize these pieces. It doesn't matter what order they're in or whatever. What we're trying to do is, how many touch points can we get these people to interact with? You know, you're building like that brain worm. Like, yes, CopyPress, constantly top of mind, or whatever your company is. We are constantly engaging with you around what you want. Again, if you're on our newsletter, we've probably been doing this to you. We did it to you. You're here now. You're on a webinar. You came from the newsletter. We're constantly delivering information. And at the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you a QR code to download an ebook, right? So it's very meta right now, what we're doing. Creating successful lead magnets. Keep these tips in mind when you're creating them. Value offering. Create and express value. You want people to know what you're giving to them is worth their time, right? There's an exchange. Even though your lead magnet is quote unquote free, it's not free. They are giving you time in exchange for it. So you need to let them know what they're going to receive. You can't just be like, download our macronutrient ebook. That's your call to action. No, what's in the damn ebook? Why should they actually download it, right? $1,000 worth of free advice and training from qualified consultants. That's the kind of messaging you want. Immediate gratification. If you tell somebody they're going to get something, you better deliver on it. You know, download our ebook, and then it doesn't download. They actually get an email that then it's like 24 hours before they receive it. You've lost them, right? It's a terrible experience. Get them what they want right away. That also goes towards messaging. If you tell them like, hey, I'm delivering $8 million worth of advice in this ebook about real estate, it better not just be like a basic real estate book, right? You need to match the intent, because now all you've done is you duped your consumer and they're not happy with the overall experience. Clear messaging. Keep your CTA short and sweet, right? So your CTA is different than the value offering. Your value offering is where you're breaking down what's the value, but the actual CTA, to get this and more, download now, right? Like, that's your CTA. Like, take this action. This is what you need to do. Provide solutions or guidance. Push the user further down the funnel. We did this to you already. Hey, this webinar is packed with stuff that we will not be able to go into enough detail. You can use our Calendly to sign up for more time with me, right? So Or for the macronutrient calculator, hey, you use this calculator, here's an ebook to give you more information. I think successful lead magnet's going to do all of those things, really juice conversions, but also push them further into your funnel. All right, so far we've talked about creating purpose-driven headlines, which you can use that topic throughout all of this. We're going to talk about newsletters now. We've talked about creating purpose-driven content whose main purpose is to cause an action. That action is amongst your lead magnets. You've now got those people into your actual pipeline and you're interacting with other lead magnets with them. But the other really simple thing to do is create a newsletter, send it on a very similar cadence, and constantly stay in front of that group of people. So we're going to talk about structuring your newsletter and content ideas to get started. Newsletters could be 5 webinars and topics. So again, we're going to move through this quickly, but it will be a really good starting point. So the goal of newsletters, a great newsletter is your way to slowly nurture leads generated from your lead magnets towards making a purchase, right? People have interacted with your content, they interacted with your lead magnet, but they're still not ready to purchase yet. You want to stay engaged with them without having to create 8,000 lead magnets to constantly stay in front of them. So newsletter is kind of a soft way to stay there, but also a great way to be sending your lead magnets without sending annoying emails as well, right? Like you don't want to over inundate like your consumer base with nonstop promotions, especially in a B2B setting. And the newsletter is a soft way to do that. Again, an exchange of value. Yes, you're going to open my email. Yes, I'm going to pitch you something, but I'm going to give you value for that time. And so it's an exchange of value. So leads can sit in your pipeline for months. Newsletters is a great way to get the most out of your content. And newsletters can turn leads into sales. We have seen this happen, right? I think lead magnets can also turn leads into sales anytime they're in the pipeline. But newsletters can really, when we use the word nurture, newsletters are by far the biggest nurture part of the equation. So structuring your newsletter, what should it look like? 1, make it scannable. The worst thing you can honestly do with a newsletter is over design it. I would tell you, if you don't subscribe to newsletters, you should start subscribing to newsletters. Go on to a Substack and just find some people that you like and see how content producers, and not necessarily companies, produce their newsletters. Okay. There's a software called mailbrew.com, mailbrew, like coffeebrew.com, that would allow you to use, they give you an email address that you can actually subscribe to the newsletters, get them there instead of your email inbox, and it will send you the ones you get every day in one email. It's a great way to consolidate your newsletters. So that's a great place to test and consolidate and see what people are doing with their newsletter creation. Another pitch for a newsletter I really like is the Over It blog, overit.com. Lisa Barone's newsletter is really, really good. And again, she keeps it really scannable. It's like, yeah, it's designed nice enough, but you're receiving this in your email or on your phone. Designing too much is a bad idea. Set the tone with an introduction and a friendly voice. A newsletter that's just like, bam, a bunch of information. It doesn't come across as well as people that are like, hey, it's me again. I'm here to share XYZ with you. Why? Because of the medium, right? Emails are meant to be conversational. It's not a place to just shout at people. Obviously, people do this, but I think even if you look at the best marketing emails and newsletters, they're always very conversational and friendly in tone. And humanizing this can be very important as well. Use clear headings or subheadings. So just like you would for a blog post, again, just don't over optimize for that, meaning don't get too fancy with it, but definitely bring some generalized structure to it. Mix and match content types to increase engagement. We'll talk about different types of content you can put within the newsletter, and include a powerful CTA. So, if you're working from the top down here, I'm going to start off my newsletter with, a personalized intro, probably a heading or a title, kind of, hey, here's what this topic's about. Maybe I have 2 types of content in my newsletter. Each of those have a subheading, And then I've got a CTA at the end that really lets people know. And you may want to experiment with CTAs in different places depending on how your audience is. But early days, you don't want to just like, here's our newsletter, 30 words, huge CTA, go from there. There's minimal value, right? So these are all going to be the components of a good, solid newsletter that's going to get opens and limit unsubscribe rate. Like that's going to be really important for you. Newsletter content ideas. Now you can do one of these or multiple of these in a newsletter. Company updates. What's going on with your company? This is going to be most important if you have a company that has a strong community around it. SaaS products are really good for this kind of thing. You know, somebody like CopyPress, less important. People don't really care necessarily what's going on with CopyPress. We will update people when we have technology coming out. But, you know, what you don't want to put in here is like, last month was a great month. We made this many sales. That's not the place for this. Company updates need to be more about feature additions, product changes, things that are happening. We actually have a separate email we run with newsletter for our contracting community that is much more company focused. Hey, here's a spotlight on this person. I think we've done employee spotlights before in our main newsletter. That's the kind of stuff that I think works. Emerging trends. All right. So if you're an expert and authority in the space, writing articles about, hey, here's what's coming. Great example of this, if you are in the search space, is whenever there's an update in Google, you'll see a bunch of newsletters that are SEO focused. Here's what's going on with Google. Here's what it means for the future, right? Or nowadays, everything's AI. So like it's all AI emerging trends. And I think that's an important point too, is like, just because something's an emerging trend, if it's completely saturated, it might be worth not looking at doing it and just kind of figure out how you differentiate, or taking an opposing view if it's possible. Breaking news. This again would be really contingent on what you do, but going back to the Google update idea, Google just put the update out. Hey, we're putting a newsletter out right now to let everybody know what our thoughts on it are. Informational content. That's just like a standard article. Like we do those a lot with CopyPress. So we'll put out newsletters that are a series. Like right now we're doing the cyborg content method, which is AI mixed with humans. We're breaking down how to use AI correctly in the content space from our perspective. And then we normally roll those into a combined ebook as well. Curated resources. This is a low lift effort where you can go and who are your favorite bloggers, whatever. Mailbrew.com is, again, a great tool to use for this because you can actually put in other sources other than newsletters and just kind of every week get updates, put them in a folder. And then, okay, for our newsletter, here's the top 5 things we read this week, right? From other providers. It also is a great relationship builder with other publishers in the space. Tracking content and engagement. We're going to talk about metrics to watch, using data to iterate. Analytics is an extraordinarily in-depth topic, so this is going to be a very high level. And you know, you've already listened to me talk for about 50 minutes, so I think it's about time for Q&A. Utilize these metrics to gauge the effectiveness of your purpose-driven content. Page views and users. That's your first on your content level. Who's engaging with it? Bounce rates, super important. Is it sticky or not? If bounce rates are high, go back to the drawing board. Conversion to lead magnet lander, meaning what happens from the time somebody sign up for a lead magnet lander. They hit your lead magnet lander, the banner where you have something going to them, to actually utilizing it. So CTR, kind of from your compelling content to the lead magnet, what's the CTR there? Time on page, I think, is really valuable. So you may see something that's not converting to a lead magnet, like an article, but they spend a ton of time on the page or multiple page views. That content's good. Something's wrong with your conversion. And so you need to look at conversion optimization, not the content. Metrics for lead magnets, number of conversions, time spent on a magnet if interactive or content-based, and track the source. What was the original source content that led to the conversion of your lead magnet? Because they may go through multiple page views, What was the original one they landed on that led them down that journey? Metrics for newsletters, open rate, really key. If you have a shit open rate, if you have a bad open rate, then nothing else really matters. Nobody's seeing the content. You need to do better subject line creation. CTR on any links and the links they clicked, main CTA clicks, right? So you should have other links in your newsletter probably and a main CTA. You want to limit the number of links, but if you have resources specifically, who's clicking on what and how often. And then you want to use this data that we just went through to iterate. The idea that you're going to create a campaign and create the right purpose-driven content the first time and everything's going to work beautifully, it just doesn't happen. I don't think I've ever seen it happen in any campaign ever. So you're going to need to iterate. And you can't just guess on what you're going to iterate. You have to use the data to help guide you down the path. Low page views, high bounce rates. All right, my compelling original content is off. High page views, high time on page, but low conversion rate to lead magnet. All right, my conversions are off. All of those things are dialed in, but my open rate's off on my newsletter. Okay, got to work on my subject lines. You need to build this process and say, okay, here's my calendar, here's my process, here's what I'm monitoring. How do I go from there? So now we're going to bring Liz on.
Hi, everyone. I have been just in the background monitoring all of your questions. So we're going to do a little Q&A section now, and I will actually pin your questions on the screen and we'll get Dave's feedback on them. So Dave, to kick things off, we have a really good question here from Veronica. She asks, how many lead magnets does someone typically need to engage with before they make a purchase? And at what point should the sales team really step in and take
Yeah,
over?
this is a great question. So there's almost no answer for the first part of the question because it's going to be really based on your company and what they sell. So, like CopyPress, again, we see a ton of engagement with a lot of different lead magnets pre-sale. But I think a lot of it may come down to purchase price, right? Like price point stuff. But that shouldn't matter because of the second part of your question. You should be tracking those interactions. Like Liz does it for me. Track it in your CRM. We use Pipedrive. We can see where everybody's interacting, and she will note leads like, "Hey, Dave, we're getting a lot of interaction from this particular person. Let's go ahead and reach out to them." Right. So I think the main thing is not to just wait for them to sign up for a sales call. See that they're interacting, have some kind of trigger point, whether it's a scoring system or whatever, where you say, okay, this person is now a hot prospect. Let's go ahead and interact with them individually and start contacting them.
Next up, we have a question from Natalie, and she asks, do you have any tips to optimize lead capture forms and landing pages to maximize conversions?
Yeah, I think a basic one that we have seen is specifically if we're talking about lead magnets, do not make them fill out a ton of info, right? The more info
Right.
you have them fill out, the less likely are to convert. You can get the other info, especially today, from other like lead nurturing sources. If I have somebody's email address and their name, and they at least put their company's email in, I can get a ton of information about them. So, like, what do you really need outside of name and email? You can be like, well, they'll put a Gmail in or this or that. Okay, it often doesn't happen. Like it does, but it doesn't, and it weeds things out on its own. So I would say the biggest optimization tip for lead capturing in the sense of lead magnets is do not create too robust of a form. On the other side, if it's a sales call sign up, yes, you want to collect as much data as possible because not only does it helps qualify the sales call as well in a sense, right? Because it will weed out some of those things. But I think what happens a lot of times is people approach lead magnets and sales calls from the same data capture perspective. And if I want to use your calculator, I don't want to give you my blood type, right? I just want to get into the thing. And there's enough ways technically to find the information now that you shouldn't need more than their name and email.
Yeah, that's great advice. Keep it as simple as possible. It should be something that leads can fill out without even thinking about it, right? Speaking of calculators, we have a little bit of a more specific question here. Serena asks if you have any suggestions on how to build calculators online for free, something a little bit jazzier than just using an Excel spreadsheet, but that maybe doesn't require developing skills.
Yeah, there's a couple of companies, and I'm blanking on their names. But if you put like calculator builder or marketing calculator builder into Google, I know there's a couple of platforms that allow for. They basically have pre-built models that you can skin and design on your own, right? So like calculators, quizzes, all of that kind of stuff. There's a couple of them, like I think Canva, but for quizzes and calculators. Um, they're usually not heavily priced, probably based on usage and views, but they do exist. And honestly, that's the place I would go before you start investing development dollars in calculators and quizzes and that kind of interactive content. Test it with something lo-fi first, and not. I mean, Excel can be lo-fi enough. You could have a download of Excel, but I think there are enough options now on like a no code kind of basis that you can get it done.
All right, next question comes from Max. You talked a little bit about, you know, creating authority-driven content. Do you have any suggestions for where people can find those industry experts? If you can help them craft really engaging lead magnets? And then, are there any tips for pitching them to actually work together?
Yeah, so we've this is something we do quite a lot. We use part of Thematical that we've built actually builds lists of these experts and places to outreach, but it can be as simple as once you've done your topic creation, going to either just Google itself or like a SEMrush or some other tool, finding the people that are writing informational articles about your topics already, kind of weed out your competitors. And now you have a list of people, right, to actually reach out to. And in terms of pitching them for collaboration, the easiest way is to tell them you'll pay them to write for your website, right? People like money and need it to buy things like groceries. But the other way to do it could be like, hey, we're going to give you free product to write for us. And remember, I'm being clear here. They're writing on your website as the expert. Getting them to write on their website as an expert is different and would need things like disclosures in place. But other options could be things like they may just, I mean, honestly, we have people that write for CopyPress that just love to write. They're experts, but they also need to build their authority, and so they use CopyPress's blog to build their authority as well. So the best place to start is just letting them know, hey, I really love your work. We're in the space, we're looking for authorities to help us. What kind of relationship could potentially work here? Just have a conversation with them. Most people are going to be really up for that. What they're not going to be up for is just like a pitch, like like a hard pitch. I want you to write this article, da 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 da, or like specifically if you're trying to post content on their site, that will probably not even get read.
Right. I think focusing on what can you provide them of value before asking them for something
Yeah,
is great.
100%. And just letting them know, people love to get complimented. So just, letting them know you love their work. And you need to go beyond just, I loved your article here. I get 800 emails a day with that stuff. It needs to be like, I really loved it. Your idea about XYZ is right on and it fits our company's concept as well. Humanize it.
All right. Question from Joanne. What is a good open rate for newsletters?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on industry. What's our open rate generally for copy presses?
We hover right around 51%.
Yeah,
I
that's a
think it,
cra-
it really matters what you're offering of value, right? If you're sending out an email for a free ebook, your open rate might be a little bit higher than if you're sending out a pitch for them
What
to
about,
schedule a sales call, right?
yeah, but I mean newsletters specifically.
Newsletters, we hover right around 51%.
Yeah, so that's crazy high. Like that's not a good metric. I would say anything above 20% is good. I think I think I saw something somewhere it was like 30% is a good newsletter open rate. I think we've gotten really good about our newsletter, but early days we were seeing things like 5 and 10%. You have a problem then. Um, and it's a hard one because some of the open rate issue might be that you had a really bad newsletter in the past and you've now got to win those people back to actually want to read your content. It might not just be subject line heavy. And so you got kind of an uphill battle, but we did have open rate problems at some point in time. And I think what honestly helps us is we put really unique content that doesn't exist anywhere else into that newsletter. So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I think just to build off of that, another important thing to pay attention to is how often are you cleaning your list? Do you just have accounts on
That's
there and
yeah, we're
then,
really like making sure we do that. Just keeping a
yeah,
big list for the sake of keeping a big list is a bad idea. You want to clean it to people that are just really engaging with your content, right? So like, hey, this person hasn't opened an email in 2 years. Cool, get them out of there. What's the point, right? So yeah, I think keeping an eye on engagement, honing the list down, that will increase your open rates, which you might be like, well, that's kind of tricking the system. It's like, no, it's not. The other ones are just moving your rates lower than they should be. So
exactly. I think we have time for just one more question yet. These are great, guys. All right, Amanda says, are there any specific AI tools you recommend for creating lead magnets? And then, we touched on this a little bit, but what are the best stages of the creation process to use AI during?
yeah, I'm wary of using any AI tool right now that has been created for a specific purpose. Most of the stuff being created is a wrapper on an API from one of the models. And so I mean, to me, that means that ChatGPT can just be as useful as anything else. And that's kind of where we are. People will put a lot of lipstick on these products, but they're just the same old thing across the board. That doesn't mean it's going to not change over time. Again, this isn't me being a naysayer about AI. It's just saying where we generally are in the building process right now. And what stages of the creation process is a really great question. And you're thinking in the right direction. AI is really good at the planning stages if it's handled correctly, right? So, like if I was to use AI to help me with an ebook, what we've done is we've built some tools around AI. So I will actually go scrape the web for articles on a topic, not ask AI about the information. I will then send my scraped content about the topic through AI to summarize. So there's the AI component, and then send that research document that's completed through AI to create an outline based on a very specific structured prompt. And then send that outline and the research through to create a very structured prompt draft, which then needs to be handed to an actual writer who's a human, right? Like, so I think that beginning stages, it can be very useful, but only if planned methodically. Right. If you break that process, you're like, well, I'll just use the chat GPT for the research. Okay. There's no resources. You don't know where that came from, right? That's problematic. So you don't know what's right and what's wrong. Hallucinations on top of just the fact that you don't know that the training material was correct or what the AI is doing. I saw today that Gab, which is like a far right social app, has trained their API to have Holocaust denial as a feature, right?
Oh, goodness.
So like, yeah, um, that got me off topic because it's just so insane that it breaks my brain. Um, I think from the writing standpoint, that's really where, to me, AI falls down. It's not just the fact that it can't come up with new ideas or connect emotionally. It also does things like use transitional phrases too often. The content to me it's not as quality as a really good copywriter. And that's my perspective as somebody who works in content. But I think it's serviceable for some things. Like a great example of where you could use it is if you do news on your website. I think it can do news copy pretty well. And you can probably prompt out a lot of the transitional phrases stuff. And then I think it can do some editing and QA kind of work where it's doing some checking on that, but those are early days. I think it will all get better as we go. I think the amount of content being created with AI has me concerned about the future of AI itself, because there's a snake eating its tail moment that could happen at some point in time. Um, but I think, if you're going to integrate it into your company, based on what I just said, the planning phase is where it's got a lot of power to help humans, and to help you scale your work more effectively. And the place I would say to use it the least is honestly editing and QA. If you are getting pressured internally to use it for writing, my advice would always be to hire a human editor to review it. We haven't even faced the challenges that are going to come up with the fact, if you are just posting content from AI and it is not factually correct, lawsuits and things like that that are going to eventually come up, especially if you work in a regulated space. It's something that is eventually going to happen, and we'll see it. And so editing and QA, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, and such a important piece when you're trying to actually build trust and build a relationship with
Yeah.
your leads too, is making sure that the stuff that you're publishing serves a purpose and it's actually factual and you can stand behind it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what, if you want to look at AI in general, it's like, can we, can we is the question. Yes. Should we? That's what people aren't asking. Like,
Yeah.
like somebody the other day was like, well, we could create 100 with this new video stuff that OpenAI is putting out. Somebody's like, we could put out 100 videos or 100 movies where Leo DiCaprio is the star of it. I'm like, can you? Yes. Should you? No.
Probably
like
not.
what's the point of creating soulless movies that have like none of the connection of a real actor in it just because you have their face? And I think that as a marketer, that's a great question to ask yourself. Can I? Yes. Should I? No. If that's kind of where you are, you say, okay, we shouldn't do this. But I also know a lot of you are getting pressure to utilize it for cost savings, and so I think getting more informed on the topic overall can help you sell it internally about, and being flexible. Yes, we can use it here. And should we? Yes. Can we use it here? And should we? No. And like letting people know it that way and let them know the downfalls of it as well.
That is a great point. All right, well, it looks like we are actually a little bit past time, but before we log off, I just want to remind everyone to be on the lookout for an email that we'll be sending out with a recording of today's webinar and then also this ebook to download if you haven't had a chance to scan it. I know this QR code has been up there for a while, so hopefully most of you have already downloaded it. Any other last closing thoughts, Dave, before we head out?
No, I appreciate everybody being here. Like I said, really robust topic. I'm sorry if you're more expert marketer and you felt this to be a little shallow in topic, but I think there are a lot of marketers who, I mean, one, I think I'm hoping we gave a couple of good tidbits that you could take away from it. I'm guessing you wouldn't be here. I don't know who I'm talking to. You wouldn't be on here anymore if you felt it to be a waste of time. You didn't just tune in to see me ramble on. But again, I appreciate everybody joining. I hope it was thought provoking. The ebook is really great. It's mostly focused around HubSpot, but there's a lot of information you could take apply to any CMS that can get you even further along here. And also, if you go to CopyPress's library, there's a couple of other ebooks. I mentioned like the Authority Builder ebook that kind of pick up on these topics as well. I also think we have one on headline creation, maybe.
Yeah.
So there's stuff that kind of goes deeper into this topic. That's a great place to go. And it will put you in our lead funnel. So, I'm accomplishing what I said I would do during the webinar.
Right, we'd love to see that too. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you at one of our upcoming webinars.